This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs, and my guests on today's program are Deacon Craig and Judy Bickle, and they have been involved for many years with a program called Retrouvaille, and that's what we're going to talk about today on the program, Retrouvaille, because there's going to be a Retrouvaille program weekend coming up in just, I guess, a week or so, or a few weeks. So let's talk about the program. But first, before we get into that, though, please, Craig and Judy, tell us about yourselves, if you would, please.
Go ahead, Jude.
Okay. Well, I was born into a Catholic family, baptized as a baby, went to Catholic school for 12 years, when most of the teachers back at that time were nuns. So I got a wonderful Catholic education besides the academic part of it. So, but like so many others, college and a little beyond, I didn't practice my faith, but did come back to it through the Catholic Charismatic Renewal, which is where I met my husband.
Yeah. Yeah, similar situation. Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, fell away from it in college, not unusual. Throughout my 20s, had a real epiphany and in my faith in my late 20s, got involved in the renewal, met Judy. We were friends for a good 4 years or more. We were involved in a prayer group with many others in similar situations. It was a terrific experience in our life. And we did start to actually see one another in a different way 4.5 years into it. And here we ended up getting engaged and married. And
we're married 37 years.
Married 37 years.
We have a daughter, Jennifer.
Awesome.
Right. We have a daughter, Jennifer, and numerous dogs through the years. And I don't know if you want to get into what led us to Retrouvaille now or at a later
Yeah,
time.
sure. That was going to be my next question. First of all, for our listeners, why don't you explain Retrouvaille, what it is, and then talk about how you got involved.
Well, Retrouvaille is a ministry to troubled marriages. It was an outgrowth of Marriage Encounter. Marriage Encounter is well known. That started probably back in the 50s in Spain, I believe. And this grew out of that. It actually was founded in the mid 70s in Canada, intended for couples that had issues that were really a little too severe to be handled by Marriage Encounter. It since has grown dramatically. It's not an international ministry, still not very well known, but we're here to help people understand it. And what makes it unique is that it is taught not by professionals, not by counselors per se, but by three couples who themselves have been through difficult times and explain what they were, what brought them there, and how they got through them. It's quite unique. These are the classic wounded healers, folks who are speaking with a lot of credibility because they have lived it, they understand it, what the couples are going through that are there at the weekend. It also is, they're accompanied by a priest. It's clergy, typically it's a priest, sometimes a deacon. And the priest also is quite vulnerable about their own life, their own ministry, and what issues they may be having as well. So you have three couples and a priest who are just being exceedingly vulnerable and sharing how they have been healed and gotten through the various issues that they've had. And the weekend is then followed by what's called post session, which are 12 teachings divided into 6 Sunday afternoons. Powerful stuff. I call it a toolbox, which helps folks to address just real life issues that folks have in married relationships. And then the third leg of the stool, the first being the weekend, which is a dramatic experience, the second being post, the third is what's called core, which is an acronym for continuing our Retrouvaille experience. And that's an opportunity for folks who have been through the program to come together on a regular basis, typically every month if they choose to, with other couples who themselves have been through it. There's typically a short teaching and then a sharing, and again, an opportunity to remain connected to the Retrouvaille program. And again, with people who, like themselves, have been there, done that, and are going through the process of healing. The combination is unique, it's powerful, and it's something that we experienced 18 years into our marriage, and we think it saved our marriage. We don't think
Sure.
we would be married today were it not for the ministry that is Retrouvaille.
And I'm sure couples hearing that from you, someone who's been through it, that's even more powerful than from somebody who hasn't experienced difficulties. So that's great. You said that the first leg of the stool, so to speak, is the weekend. Judy, why don't you walk us through that weekend? What will couples experience?
So you show up Friday evening. Everyone is very nervous. Everyone is on their best behavior. And after some introductions, you start to hear one of these couples or the priest give a talk. And these talks, over the course of the weekend, you'll hear 14 talks. These talks cover everything you can possibly imagine about marriage. And during the course of the weekend, you learn a communication technique called dialoguing. And dialoguing is the main tool that Retrouvaille provides, the same as Marriage Encounter, how to communicate on a deeper level with one another, on a vulnerable level, talking about your feelings, but they teach you to do it in a very particular way so you don't get offended, you don't offend each other, you don't get angry. It's a really unique tool, and it just opens people up.
Well, there are I statements. That's the key to it.
Yes.
There's a particular way to communicate in that sense with dialoguing, and that is to focus on yourself and what your feelings are, and then you share that letter with your spouse, and you communicate to your spouse what you're feeling from them based on what they wrote. And we realized we were married 18 years, and there were so many things about ourselves we didn't even know.
Right.
And here's the thing, Bob, there's so many things about ourselves, not just our spouse, but ourselves as a husband or as a wife that we didn't know. You know, you get married and you think, well, you know, we're in love, we got married, and now life just unfolds before you. You start working on your career and maybe having children and, you know, et cetera and so forth. And marriage will just happen. And I say this to the guys all the time that I speak with about this, that as a guy, I thought that was enough. I said, look, why, you know, if you love your wife, then it shouldn't be work. Why would a relationship be work? I now look back on that statement and realize how foolish I was. I mean, I'm a professional. I have my own business. I'm in the real estate business. I have a lot of different certifications that I have in the business, and most all of them require continuing education. So there's a certain amount of work just to stay on top of your game. Why in the world would marriage not require work?
Right.
Of course it would require work. Otherwise, it's not going to be anywhere near what it otherwise could be. And to make matters worse, problems will likely result, which is what happened with us. It was a communication issue. You hurt each other. You don't realize you do. You don't want to share it. You don't even know what you did. On a onesie, twosie basis, that's fine. But over the years, it just builds up and builds up and builds up. And then the classic, you push my button, right? That's an interesting expression. She or he would say something, do something. We would do this to each other, and all kinds of emotion would spew out. And then the person to whom it's being spewed gets defensive, and so it goes. And it just goes year over year over year. And at some point, you get to the point where you say, you know, this isn't working. This isn't working. Or you may think, I just don't love this person. Or maybe you think, what mistake did I make even getting married in the first place? We went through all of that, all of that. And for me, I'll never forget, Bob, that weekend, I looked around that room, and by Sunday, I said to myself, you know what? I've got a lot of company here. Yeah. What I've experienced is being experienced by most of the guys on this weekend. And it made a difference for me to realize I wasn't unique, that it actually was quite normal. And then as we got into the healing process, we also realized, you know what? The healing also can be quite normal. This is just what happens when you begin to understand ourselves in the marriage and understand how to communicate with each other. And all of a sudden, the love that we thought we no longer had, we realize
we rediscover.
which is what Retrouvaille is.
Yes.
It's a rediscovery of the relationship that you were meant to have in the first place.
So
it's
you
actually
said
better.
yeah. You said that it starts on Friday. When does it end?
Sunday afternoon.
Sunday.
And just to get back to what the weekend looks like,
Yeah.
you listen to a talk, then you will be given a question that you're meant to dialogue on. Each person writes for 10 minutes, then you get together for another 10 minutes and share your letters, and then you go on to the next talk. And it just repeats all weekend. You stop for meals. But that's what it is. You are not sharing with anyone else. You're only talking to your spouse.
Right.
About your letters. Of course, at dinner, you can chit chat, but it's very private.
Right.
Even though you're with other couples, it's very private.
Right. What makes it Catholic? Do you have Mass there, or what's the Catholic aspect?
Yes, there's Mass on Saturday morning and Sunday. The majority of people who go to Retrouvaille do seem to be Catholic, but it's not required that you go to Mass, but it is available.
Right. Good. Yeah.
And it's not going to feel, even though it's being held at a retreat house,
Right.
it's not going to feel like a retreat. It's not a retreat. And there's not a lot of like Catholic teaching. There's like the spirit of Christianity there,
Right.
but it's not Catholic teaching, but it's all very solid stuff.
Yeah.
It's not. I remember specifically the place that folks are at, including where we were at, certainly where I was at, attending the weekend. It's not a good place. You're not feeling a lot of warm and fuzzies, I'll tell you. For me, it was the last resort. It was it. This was it. This was the last thing I was going to do. We've done all kinds of other things, and I do want to mention this, Bob, that we've been to counselors twice. We've been to professional counselors. They were both Christian counselors, and it helped for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, but it never lasted. This is, again, a very different program from what you're getting in counseling. It's quite unique for the reasons I previously explained. And I would say that Retrouvaille is not overly religious. It has an overriding Catholic aspect to it because you do have Mass. There is a priest there who, again, is sharing his own issues in his ministry. But one doesn't have to be Catholic. You don't necessarily even have to be Christian. We think the basic tenets of Christianity run through it. Absolutely. It's all about healing and getting in touch with the spirit within us, which really focuses on forgiveness.
Yes.
So all of that is certainly consistent with the teachings of Christ. But no, one does not have to be Catholic or even necessarily Christian to do so, although most are that we have met. But it's open to everyone.
Well, when is the next program weekend?
There's one coming up in February, the 16th to the 18th. Then again, August 9th to the 11th, and October 4th to the 6th. It's always 3 times a year in those months.
And what's the cost?
In this area, it's $650 for the weekend. But no one is ever turned away if they really can't afford that.
And that's per couple?
Per couple, yes.
Okay.
And that includes, room and board and all the materials. And
Right.
Now, I want to say, Bob, I was not a deacon when I went through this.
Right.
We were very involved in the church, but we weren't bringing God into the fabric of our relationship. And again, I feel foolish in saying that now. But a lot of the issues that we had, I think had we done that, more of that, maybe we would have worked through them a little bit better than we did. But we certainly were decent folks trying to make a difference in the world, and going to church and so forth and so on. And again, we've met hundreds, literally at this point, hundreds of couples just like us who are attending church. Some are, some aren't, but they're living this life of quiet desperation.
Yes.
I think that's the term. I mean, they're decent, good and decent people, and they're just miserable. They don't know how to get out of it. You get caught in a rut, and you just don't know, which way to go. And we share to people, if you talk to your friends, your family, they're going to side with you typically. And most folks, and we kind of laugh at this when we meet people, they always point the finger at somebody else. They say, if he would change, we'd be fine. He would say, if she would change, we'd be fine. And what they don't realize is it's both parties that play a role in this, without question. And the beauty of Retrouvaille is it ultimately puts a mirror up to ourselves. And this is where the Spirit of Christ comes into this. And you begin to see who you really are in this relationship. And you have this epiphany and say, you know what? Yeah, I really caused some of these things. I had no idea at the time if I had done this differently or said this differently, or maybe we wouldn't have been in this situation. So in that sense, it's so very positive in terms of each individual. And as the man and the woman both begin to come to that realization, bingo, the marriage improves, right? No surprise. And there's a lot of, I'll use the word transformation that takes place in terms of our relationship with Christ. It certainly happened to us. And it was several years after Retrouvaille that Judy, here's the woman I wasn't sure I was going to remain with, said to me, Craig, I think you have a calling to be a deacon. This comes from my wife. You talk about success stories. And one thing led to another, and I was accepted, went to formation, was ordained, and Judy and I, have shared a lot of ministry together.
Good job, Judy.
Exactly. So again, this is, I mean, we have thrown a hat in the ring, Bob, probably not long after the weekend.
A few months, yeah.
We just felt, yeah, we're gonna make it. We're gonna get through this. And how can we be a part of helping others as so many others have helped us? So we became presenters. We began to host these core meetings, and people would come to our home. And Bob, we need another, couple of hours to share some of the success stories, but there's one in particular
Please
I'd like to share. Do we have time?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, obviously, you're looking at one success story right here, but
I would like to say
Yeah.
that people should know,
Yeah.
we both had divorce lawyers.
Oh yeah,
We were married 18 years.
Yeah.
We both had divorce lawyers. We were probably 75% of the way through that process. So it's never too late. I would really encourage people, no matter how badly they think things are going, how close to a divorce or a separation they might be, to still give Retrouvaille a try.
yeah, but this what I'm going to share with you, and again, it's not unusual. This was a couple who were both working, both making a fairly substantial income. They had two children. Was it?
I think so.
They had two children, and just really, really good, decent folks, and they just were miserable. They were stuck in a rut. They didn't know how to get out of it. They made a decision to get divorced, but before they did that, they said, "Let's go to Retrouvaille," and they went through the program, the weekend as well as the post teachings, and they actually came to our core. And there was one particular night where they were the only ones who showed, which is sometimes great because you have a chance to really dig deep and drill down into the issues of a particular couple. And I'll never forget, they're sitting on a kitchen table, and I could see that they were people that they took their promises seriously. They took their faith seriously, and they thought there was a light at the end of the tunnel here, or maybe they could make it work, but they were still struggling. And I remember saying this to them. I said, "Do you believe that God brought you together?" And they said, "Yes." And most folks at Retrouvaille will say that. Yes, back then, yes, we thought that was the case. I said, okay. I said, "Do you believe God wants to heal your marriage?" And they thought for a moment, and they said, well, sure. I said, okay. I said, do you believe Almighty God has the power to heal your marriage? And they said, well, of course. I said, so God brought you together. It was his will that you be together. You believe he wants to heal you. You believe he has the power to heal you. And then I said, well, why won't your marriage be healed? And there was this long pause. And he looked at her and she looked at him. And they both looked at us together and said, almost in unison, because we won't let him. I said, that's right. So get out of the way and allow the grace of God to heal you individually and heal your marriage. And that was the last time we saw them until there was a conference over in Pennsylvania. We're from Jersey, over in Pennsylvania, right? And we ran into them. It was a marriage conference at a church. And this guy had already bought a house. He owned a house. He was prepared to move within weeks, and leave her with the two kids. And we ran into them. This is months later. And we said, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you. Oh man, what's happening? He said, well, we're here. We're doing, I think they were holding hands.
Yes.
I said, we're here.
And he rented out the house to somebody else.
And I said, what happened with the house? He said, I'm a landlord now. So this is the stuff that happens. Okay. I mean, they were that close, even to the point of buying a house ready to move. So God works through this in a powerful way. We just can't do more than to encourage folks to really seriously look into Retrouvaille. If you think you've done everything you can, you haven't, as we haven't, until you go to Retrouvaille. Open your heart, look around that room, realize how much you have a community of people who are broken. And it's not unusual. We've come to learn this. This is more common than it's not. And it's remarkable. It's remarkable, the healing that's available. And it's just down to earth, practical stuff. And it works.
How can someone sign up for this program that's coming up, the weekend program at the later on this month? What's the steps? I've been putting up the website. That's a good place to go, I would think, for information.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
Yes. And there's also a phone number, 800-470-2230. So either way.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a call back from a reservation couple, and they'll walk you through it.
Yeah. And don't let the $600 hold you back, right? If you don't have it. And you don't have to be Catholic or Christian. You can be from any denomination or no denomination.
Or none.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And what have you got to lose, right?
Right.
Nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Craig and Judy, thanks so much for being with us today on Catholic Forum. We look forward to maybe having you back some other time, maybe before another weekend program. And best of luck, and may God continue to bless your ministry.
Thank you.
so
Thank you,
much.
Bob.
Thanks.